1998, Bill Clinton is involved in the Monica Lewinsky scandal. He's ensconced in it. The only thing that the press can talk about is Monica Lewinsky and Bill Clinton, and how far does it go? This would eventually get Bill Clinton impeached, even though it didn't necessarily get Bill Clinton removed. And the Republicans paid for that impeachment because the public was not accepting that a blowjob was enough to take down a president. Nevertheless, while Bill Clinton was embroiled in that, Bill Clinton launched strikes on Afghanistan and the Sudan. Now, the press immediately said, "Wag the dog!" Now, this is based on a movie, basically where, think of it this way, where the character is trying to get rid of this thought, for one sense, and so they attack a country to distract. So the thought was Bill Clinton was attacking those countries to distract from the fact that the press, and the only thing the press could talk about, was him and Monica Lewinsky. Now, Bill Clinton at the time apparently was looking at a little-known figure named Bin Laden, and an argument is made, especially by Bill Clinton himself, when he's being blamed by George Bush and Republicans that he allowed Bin Laden to basically hit Afghanistan, hit the United States. That was on Bush. Nevertheless, the argument is made that Bill Clinton wasn't paying adequate attention. Now, Bill Clinton makes the argument, no, I was trying to pay attention, but you guys were screaming "wag the dog," and it eroded my ability to focus on Bin Laden. Whichever the argument is, my point is the wag the dog reference in politics goes back to that particular moment with Bill Clinton, Monica Lewinsky, and launching off cruise missile strikes on Sudan and Afghanistan. Why am I bringing that up? Recently, a few months ago, the United States, or company, Silvercorp, basically had a contract to go into Venezuela, murder a bunch of people, whoever they needed to murder, get their hands on Maduro, kill or capture, and to violently and bloodily install Guaido, a man that nobody knows and is basically a comic book clown, utterly ridiculous character, and yet a dangerous one, trying one violent uprising after the next, all of which failed miserably because nobody in the country supported him. But here's the catch. That coup, that attempted coup, was backed by Guaido. And I have a hard time believing that it was not blessed by the United States. Donald Trump, weak, fledgling in regards to the polling and everything else, in an election campaign, is sailing a ship into Venezuelan waters. And in doing this, it has to be understood that the potential for conflict is tremendous. The U.S. is sailing its ship, the Neats, 20 miles from the same place that those people tried to invade and bloodily murder a lot of people to try to get their hands on Maduro. Here's the catch. Iran has been supplying oil to Venezuela. They've been sailing their ships from Iran, international waters, Venezuela. The United States has taken the utterly ludicrous and hilarious step to put sanctions on the pilots of those ships, the 5 captains. Now, understand what we're saying here. One sovereign nation trades with another sovereign nation, and the United States says, we, God King America, headed by Donald Trump, brain trusts, don't like that. And so we are going to use our great powers in the economic sphere to punish countries who we have already been punishing. One, pulling out the JCPOA, murdering leaders of those countries, and trying to foment coups in those countries by creating all sorts of chaos and havoc, by starving or allowing disease to run rampant based on the sanctions that we've been applying to those countries. Hundreds of thousands of people have died from those sanctions, just like 500,000 kids were murdered by Bill Clinton with his sanctions. The thing is, what is Donald Trump doing in doing this? He has to fully know that if his ship comes in contact with a Venezuelan ship, that would start a potential war. If that ship comes in contact with an Iranian ship, that could start a potential war. And nevertheless, here it is, sailing close to the borders of Venezuela, sovereign nation that we've been trying to overthrow. Breaking, USS Neats conducts a quote-unquote freedom of navigation operation. The Orwellian speak is astonishing. It's really the opposite of that, right? This is basically force projection to try to create some kind of intervening, almost blockade of sorts, incidental in their freedom of whatever they call it, freedom of navigation operation. If that ship came in contact with a ship coming from Iran that was giving oil, what happens? I'm asking you, what happens? Because I have no idea. And is that not the problem? You have no idea. You've utterly and fundamentally lost control of that particular situation, instigating something that is much larger than your ability to basically compensate and corral because of actions like this. Donald Trump is potentially starting a war. Whether or not he accomplishes that mission or not is almost irrelevant to the fact that this operation, this action, could have larger consequences if indeed an Iranian ship was in that area, or for that matter, if Venezuela pitched a fit that their ship was there. There's something else I want you to notice: the delegitimization. The USS Neats conducts a freedom of navigation operation contesting an excessive maritime claim by Venezuela. The U.S. Navy ship lawfully navigated an area of illegitimate Maduro. Now think about what that means. If I say that Donald Trump is illegitimate and as such he's not my president, what actions can I take? What actions can the people in a society take in order to effect that? Can they take operations like, calling him a Russian stooge and getting him kicked out of office in a soft coup? Yes, that makes that perfectly okay under that mindset that he's not the legitimate president of the United States. Anyway, Donald Trump and Nancy Pelosi and all of these other goofballs who make this argument that the legitimately elected leader of a particular country is illegitimate because we don't like the fact that he's a leader. Think about what that means. Now, before you say, yeah, that's comically ridiculous, is that not what Obama did in Syria? Is that not what Obama did in Libya? How is this different? In fact, you can even make an argument that this force projection is of a lesser magnitude than what Obama did when he fully used terrorists and head choppers to utterly kill Gaddafi and turn that place into a basket case, and try to do the same thing in Syria where you got 500,000 people killed, pushing out the leader of a particular country. I don't give a shit who a country puts as their leader or whether or not a person is still there over time. Those countries have their own struggles that they deal with in regards to trying to remove somebody that is in power and the freedoms to which they fight for. That is no different than us. That is no different than the countries in Europe. I don't need to be involved in that process. I make the very basic point that it is not for us to determine who is the elected leader or who is the leader of a particular country. It is not for us to make that choice. And I have to be honest, the bombs by the United States or the blades of quote-unquote terrorists kill equally the same. You can make an argument that the bombs kill infinitely more, infinitely better, just from the range and the number of people it can kill at once. This is appalling. And a rational nation doesn't behave this way. This is why I keep asking this question. What does a rational nation do? And why doesn't your nation behave rationally? And don't tell me to go vote, because whether that was Obama or whether that was Trump, both are operating off the same premise. When I make the point to you that the Democratic Party and the Republican Party are fundamentally the same, that basically the things that one party believes the other party fundamentally believes, they just believe them in degrees. You don't have an option in regards to your politics or your political space for something else. You basically have the same party that you've been convinced through a successive onslaught of propaganda are somehow different in their political spectrums. They're just degrees. If you were in another country, let's say China, and in that Chinese government where you have one communist government, do you honestly believe that everybody in that government is lockstep? You don't believe at all that there may be degrees and subjectivity in the way that they go about their particular ideology? But what's the one premise though? It's all based off of a singular ideology. You don't have the option for anything else. Are we that different? Do you have an option out of a capitalistic system. For example, if I want to make the argument that this government, in the same way that it supplies money to the military complex, if it indeed cares and uses this argument that the military is there to protect life and limb of this country, fair enough. Should we not also care about life and limb from the standpoint of healthcare? And should not our government, in the same way that it supplies the military money to protect life and limb here, should we also protect life and limb here by making sure each and every one of us are healthy? Now, I can make that argument and they say you're a socialist. I would say I'm not a socialist, I'm a rational actor who wants to ensure that each and every person has health care. I can look across the world, figure out how they do it, and do the same thing here and save money in the process. My point here is you don't have anybody in your political space that is able to take a deviation from the capitalistic pathway of looking at the world. And as such, you can't tell me that those are two different political parties. They're just two wings of the same bird that have a subjective difference in regards to the way they look at the world. And to make that point that much more clear, Fiona, what is her name? Carla Fiona, that rabid right-winger, she is voting for Joe Biden. John Bolton, he's voting for Joe Biden. The politics of the Democratic Party has gotten as such that Republicans, who were considered to be horrendous, hideous human beings, are voting for Joe Biden. Politics have aligned. I hope you understand what I mean by this. You move so far to the right in your politics that basically Joe Biden is acceptable to all of these other Republicans. And you are voting for him, not because of what he's doing, but because of who he's not. This force projection by Trump has the potential to escalate into something utterly nasty, especially if that ship tries to intervene when Iran is delivering oil, one sovereign nation to the next, something that the United States has no business in engaging in, seeing as which that oil shipment becomes necessary because of the U.S. actions in the first place. Those countries can trade with one another. If you are intervening in those countries trading with one another, you're not in a freedom of navigation operation. You're in a force projection operation. Those things are different. Why aren't you being honest with what you're doing here? This is kind of the point when I'm saying we're ensconced with propaganda. It drips off of everything that these people say, especially when they're doing things that they know that the American public will balk at them doing. This is one of them. My point here is this action could have taken place with Obama or Trump. And yes, would it potentially escalate into something nasty? Yes. Would Obama have gone after Venezuela the way he did? I don't know. I do know he toppled Libya, and I do know he tried to topple Syria, and I do know he got hundreds of thousands of people killed in that process. Whatever you want to say about Trump, he didn't start a war. He might have been too comically ridiculous to do so, or maybe he didn't necessarily just want to do that, considering that he got into office with this notion that he was going to somehow, run with the lilies. My only point in this is Trump is potentially wagging the dog. Trump knows he has all sorts of problems here at home, and he is looking for some kind of win, and I suspect he believes that Iran wouldn't necessarily take provocative action, even if the United States takes provocative action. Under this idea that we did it once, they didn't respond in any kind of real way that could actually hurt us in real terms. And so we can do it again. I could give my base a win and get them ginned up. I don't know if that's what he's going for, if he's just going for the force projection, meaning I'm just going to put a ship there, I'm going to drive it 12 miles out, and I'm going to go elsewhere. Either one is possible dealing with Trump. Just be very aware before you wag your finger at Trump on this. Obama has rivers of blood on his hands, to every bit as much of a degree, and more so than Trump. And for whatever actions Trump has taken from the standpoint of Venezuela and Iran, heft that against the number of people that Obama murdered, either in those drone strikes or in those coup attempts that, again, he also didn't want to honestly own up to. Like, share,